He's the best English, I'll go as far as to say. Sorry, Kev, he's the best Englishman I've ever seen.
Hello and welcome to Outside Edge, talkSPORT's new cricket YouTube show, which will be broadcast every day of talkSPORT 2's exclusively live coverage of England's tour of India. I'm John Norman and joined by two absolute legends of English cricket today. Darren Gough, the dazzler, who dazzled us all during the 90s, and then the man who took over the mantle, Steve Harmison, GBH and all that. And it's Steve Harmison who's got a comment or two to make about Joe Root, who starred on day one of the first test match between India and England. Those two coming up, as well as your questions. Hashtag AskHarmy on Twitter, and Steve Harmison will answer the very best of them. Going to get on with the show now, but please don't forget to like and subscribe. You are watching Outside Edge.
And he works it off his body with great simplicity. Joe Root in his 100th test match. A magnificent performance.
So, on the occasion of his 100th test match, Joe Root scores a century of his own. I'm delighted to say that alongside Ashes legend Steve Harmison is a talkSPORT and England cricket legend. They didn't quite play 100 tests individually, but between them they certainly did. Goughy, you've been an England coach. You've been a broadcaster for many years. You've played for England. Where does Joe Root stand in the pantheon of great England batsmen?
Well, he's obviously there. If you look at his average for anybody, English batsman that scored 8,000 test runs, he's got the best average. And it's only rising. I think there was a point when he was batting, he was well over 50. If you want to put him up against the real elite, the Kohlis, the Smith and the Williamsons, who all average in the 50s, Joe Root's determined to get back there. And I think today's innings would have sent him probably over 50 again, so he'll be determined to stay there. A brilliant player, knows how to start an innings, and he builds and builds and builds, and he seems to have a game plan for every time he goes to the wicket, and that's a great lesson for any young batsman watching. Today, that first half an hour when he went to the crease, he was really watchful. He was getting the pace of the pitch. He was seeing how much turn, how much bounce with this new harder ball they've got. And then from that moment on, he just went on and played some beautiful shots all around the wicket.
You mentioned there, Goughy, that 8,000 runs going past 8,000 runs and beyond in the last test match, and where he stands as a great of the game. I look at it, I think he's right up there with one of the very best players we've ever had, for the simple fact, if you think when in Sri Lanka, he went past Gower, Boycott and Peterson. He has all them traits. You talk about Gower being stylish. You know, seen some of the shots that Joe Root played off the up with the seam bowler today, bang, middle of the bat, bang, down the ground. There's style there. You talk about Boycott, determination, nugget, really, he did that, you just mentioned, the first sort of hour and a half he got stuck in. And Peterson, the way everybody describes Peterson, who can go through the gears like you'd not believe. There was times in that day's play today, in the innings today, when Dom Sibley just got reined in a little bit. You seen there was a little bit of pressure on, and then all of a sudden Joe Root, bang, bang, bang. This kid is the real deal. He's the best English, I'll go as far as to say. Sorry, Kev, he's the best Englishman I've ever seen. He's just taken over from Marcus Trescothick to one of the best English players that I've ever seen. I still think Kevin Peterson's the best player that I've ever seen play cricket for England, but I'll give Joe Root that accolade now. Now he's averaging 50, past 100 test matches, 100 on his 100th test match, to say Joe Root is definitely the best Englishman I've ever seen play cricket for England.
Okay, so VIRAT Kohli's been fielding for the best part of 90 overs today. Has the gauntlet well and truly been put down? From captain to captain, they lead from the front, and now VIRAT Kohli is 120 odd behind.
Well, there's enormous respect between all those guys. Like I said, the Williamsons and the Kohlis and the Smith and the Root. And it is a competition for which one of them is the best batsman in the world. There's no doubt. I know Babar Azam has been getting a mention now. I don't think he's in that group yet, but he's a fantastic talent. But when you're talking about it, to where he played in his 100th test match today, Kohli would have been watching that and think, that's a pretty good knock, that. That's a pretty good knock. Yes, listen, win the toss, bat first, great conditions, flat pitch, slow pitch, not much spin. And they didn't bowl very well in spells as well, by the way. There's a spell of Bumrah, which he bowled really well in his second spell, a little bit in the third spell. and Ashwin when he first started, where they bowled well. But other than that, they didn't get their plans exactly right today.
Virat Kohli will be behind closed doors in his room. I think might be he'll not be questioning himself and his self-doubt, because he doesn't do that. Great to the game, don't do that, and he won't. But there might be just a little thing in the back of his mind. The last time he walked off a field was 36 all out, humiliated, gone home, not captain anymore, well, birth of his second child. Rahane goes and wins, gets all the accolades, loses the toss here. If England can rack up 450, 500, he puts big pressure on that Indian captain going into tomorrow's innings, his innings tomorrow. Because if England win this test match and Kohli doesn't get any runs, all of a sudden 1.3 billion people in that country love their game of cricket. You know what it's like, it's obsession with the game of cricket. They're already talking about Rahane and what he did as a captain. What are they going to be seeing if that goes against Virat Kohli in this test match? First of all, I don't think it's going to happen, because I can see on that sort of surface Virat Kohli scoring runs because he's a great of the game. But there will be just that added little bit of pressure when the Indian captain walks out, and it would not surprise me if someone like Ben Stokes might just be standing at slip reminding Virat when the scoreboard pressure is, what happened at Adelaide, what happened when he's captaincy, and how good of a job Ajika Rahane did. That's what happens in international sport, and little gamesmanship possibly could happen tomorrow afternoon when Virat, or the next day when Virat comes out to bat.
Brilliant stuff. Well, that's the views of Steve Harmison. And don't forget, you can ask Harmy questions throughout the day's play on Twitter. #AskHarmy. I do think that he went a bit early. It did sound like he called him Sir Ben Stokes. I'm not sure that's going to happen for a little bit. And Darren Gough, both will be back behind the commentary mic for talkSPORT 2's live and exclusive coverage from 3:45 in the morning on Saturday morning. Play getting underway at 4. But we've heard from two greats of the game. Let's hear from a legend, Joe Root himself.
Last night, the guys actually put a little surprise together for me. Said I've got some videos from some past players, some friends and family, and Ben in particular stood up and said some really kind words. Then to come today and for us to start the series in the way that we have, it couldn't have gone any better. About a little blip at the end there. So really hope that we can build on that tomorrow, and obviously delighted with how things have gone personally.
So Harmy, we've had a few questions for you on #AskHarmy on social media, on Twitter. Let's have a little look at one of them. Andrew Hall says, "Hi Steve, do you think Joe Root's incredible form is because he's not played much white ball cricket since last summer?" And Andrew got in touch using the #AskHarmy hashtag on Twitter. Interesting point.
I think it's a very interesting point, Andrew. I think what you've got with Joe is he's had a bit of time off. He's got a young family, which is getting, we talked about it, he's getting bigger, and he wants us not spend. He hasn't spent a great deal of time with them because of the COVID bubble last year. And I think just a little bit of time like that at home, refresh the batteries, get a bit of gym work done, analyse what your game is like and what the weaknesses and strengths you can add to your game. And I think a little bit of that, potentially with the not playing as much one-day cricket, has got Joe to the point where he is in a position that he is now. The one thing that I will say about Joe Root is, and again, as well as all top batsmen, once they get in and on a run, the best batsmen in the world always cash in and get on a 100 after 100 after 100, because they know for a fact round the corner there is a little bit of a lean patch. So this is Joe's golden moment, shall we say, and fingers crossed it carries on till well into the Ashes and beyond.
And what about the innings itself? We've spoken about how brilliant it was, but how does that change the game?
It changes the game for the simple fact that if, and this is why I would have quite liked Joe to go to number 3. Nitpicking here, but before the test match started, I did say I'd rather Joe bat at 3 if there was something coming out of Crawley. For the simple fact is, all of a sudden, if you had two players who aren't comfortable in this environment, i.e. the test arena, then all of a sudden, when you get a little bit of a tight spell and you get a passage of play where pressure comes, then more often than not, the player that is inexperienced cracks. If Joe was in there, and you look at the best players at number 3 that's ever played the game, the likes of Dravid and Ponting and Callis, even though he went to 4 after a while, they absorb pressure. They don't get external pressure. They don't get You know, the game, they just play their own little game and they help the guy at the other end. And I thought that's what Joe did brilliantly today. Dominic Sibley, even though you could bowl 2 or 3, 4 maidens at Dominic Sibley, when that was getting to apparent that the fielders were chirping and there was a little bit more, you know, pressure coming from outside, Joe saw a slog swept, run down a wicket, hit one down the ground or hit one through extra cover and just alleviated the pressure. For me, that was the beauty about this Joe Root innings.
And Steve Harris, also on Twitter, asks Harmy, hey Harmy, how significant do you think that wicket at the end of the day will be for the outcome of the Test match?
Not so much in the outcome of the Test match. I think it's a big wicket for India because they go in tomorrow morning with somebody both fresh at the crease, 2 new batsmen at the crease. But then all of a sudden, the scoreboard pressure, if they can come out and pick Joe Root up early tomorrow morning, then they have 2 batsmen on naught. Dominic Sibley comes out 85 not out. Joe Root comes out over 100 not out. All of a sudden, there's somebody still in with a bit of touch. You always get things in the subcontinent to happen quickly. So all of a sudden, you have a bang, bang, bang in the wickets column. Then all of a sudden there's pressure on the opposite in that dressing room. If you've got 2 players that are in, you can always have 1 player that just carries on the momentum. Having 2 players on naught could be significant. So that's so important that Root and Ben Stokes, when he comes out tomorrow morning, will just try and get through that first hour, not be bothered about runs, and really sort of try and ram home the advantage that England have got.
It, of course, didn't all go England's way. 10 minutes before the lunch break, Rory Burns unfurls a reverse sweep, falls, and then Dan Lawrence comes to the crease, playing in just his 3rd Test match and is out for a duck. And our data analyst, the wild card Jarrod Kimber, part of talkSPORT 2's live and exclusive coverage, has been studying that specific moment.
If you're thinking about Rory Burns' shot today, let me tell you just how unique it was. As far as I can see, he's the only left-hander facing an off-spinner from over the wicket to ever play a reverse sweep in the first session of the game. So if you're thinking, well, I haven't seen that before, well, you actually probably have not seen what Rory Burns did before. The reverse sweep is a really, really interesting shot. And people think maybe 120 years ago, batsmen were actually changing the way that they played occasionally, but it never really caught on until the Muhammad brothers did it from Pakistan. Hanif and Mushtaq Muhammad did it in the 1960s. And they did it against spinners because they realized that this was the best way of manipulating the field. But why I think it's a brilliant shot is it's cricket's first premeditated shot. So all the scoops and all these different shots we have now, they all come from the reverse because it's the first shot that, unless you're facing a really slow guy in a club game, you basically have to make the decision beforehand. And that's what Rory Burns did today. He was a bit worried about Ravichandran Ashwin's angle to him and where the leg slip was. He wanted to move the field around, so he made a decision to play the reverse sweep. Now, generally, batsmen average 47 in Test cricket playing the reverse sweep, so that means they usually play it very, very well, and they score it 10 runs and over when they do it. Sadly for Rory Burns, neither of those things happened, and he was dismissed the first time he did it. And he may not do it in the first session of a Test match again.
So, Steve Harmison, did anybody ever try and reverse sweep you when you were a professional bowler?
Not as a professional bowler. Somebody did last year. I think it was last season. I think I'm well into my 40s, a bit overweight, bowling a bit of off spin, and I think a 17-year-old who got a magnificent 100 for Gateshead felt, give me a little bit of reverse sweep. But during the pump, no, and I'm still baffled, I'm still amazed how you could get into that position of trying to reverse sweep, especially somebody like Ravi Ashwin, because of how tight he bowls, the wicket to wicket. You watch his release point on the crease to where he bowls from, and not much turn, especially with a new ball. He's a master with the newish ball in Indian conditions. And I still back my judgment. I've always said, Rory Burns does seem to find a way to get out just before a break, and he normally does the hard yards to get to that position. So it's not me sticking the boot in. He's played a poor shot. He needs to get his head down, because before that, I thought he looked magnificent. Balance, composure, rotation of strike. I thought he was there. It was brilliant. Just go and kick on, Rory. But for some reason, still don't. And he probably doesn't understand, even now, what he's done playing that shot. So fingers crossed. This is a good moment for Rory Burns to kick on from. And when he gets in that position of comfort, he doesn't give it away.
Okay, well, this show isn't all about the English side of things. You can always get in touch with Steve Harmison on Twitter, #AskHarmy, and some Indian cricket fans have done exactly that. So it's not just about England, this is very much about India. We are, of course, England cricket fans and former England professional cricket players, but we love the game, we love the sport, and we want to see a contest. Now, England shaded it today, but you know England, or rather India, are going to come roaring back. We've had a couple of questions. Now, there was a lot of speculation about the makeup of the Indian bowling attack coming into this match. Now, Kuldeep Yadav and Axar Patel were two players who were expected to play. Patel didn't because he was picked up an injury, but once again, Kuldeep Yadav has been overlooked for a test match. And Tanmoy has asked us this question, or asked you, Harmy. How can Kuldeep increase his mental confidence because of sitting out for more than 2 years in test matches?
Yeah, and it's a great point. It's a great point, well made, because leading into this test match, the management of the Indian cricket team said Kuldeep Yadav has got a future playing at home. Well, he hasn't played at home for a couple of years now, and I can't believe he's not played in this surface. Ashak Chopra, who is part of the talkSPORT 2 team, was gobsmacked when he wasn't, and he knows more about the Indian side of it than we do. We're trying to work out what it is, whether it was so they didn't have three bowlers turning the ball back into the batsman because of the way Kuldeep bowls. I just hope, for Indian cricket's sake, I hope it's not a negative thought, a bit like what England used to do, was because he doesn't bat, because Axar Patel bats a bit, Washington Sundar bats a bit, that they've gone down the road of lengthening their batting unit. You've got Ravi Ashwin batting at number 7 with 4 Test match hundreds. You know, VIRAT KOHLI batting, one of the greats of all time in the game, in your home country. I can't believe it's for that reason. If it is, then it's a one-up on England, because I look at what happened today. I didn't think India bowled badly. I thought England played well. I thought the bowlers at the start, Bumrah and Ishant Sharma, bowled a touch wider than I would have liked, especially to Dom Sibley. Dom Sibley is somebody who often loses his bearings a little bit on off stump, and I thought first 12, 15 balls Dom Sibley got, he must have thought it was Christmas Day. Outside off stump, I'm going to leave you all day, and he showed that throughout his whole innings. I thought Ravi Ashwin bowled quite well without really getting England under pressure. He bowled 20 odd overs with only 2 maidens, and yeah, that tells you there was not much pressure built up. And England played Nadeem and Washington Sundar brilliantly. When they came on the ball, boundary early, rotation of strike, one went at 3 and over, one went at 4 and over. So for me, England played India absolutely brilliant today. I just think India were just a little bit below par.
Very quickly, Steve, if India know that they're going to lose the toss, do they go in with an extra seamer?
I think so. I think you would have gone with an extra seamer on that if Hardik Pandya could bowl a bit. I think you'd possibly go in there because his batting is brilliant. But I do think that they have missed the trick playing the 3, especially when we talk. There was a lot of talk, John, about the ball. The SG ball was going to be a little bit harder at the cork in the middle, bigger seam, and there was going to be a little bit more pace in the wicket in Chennai. And that was what was talked about. And all of a sudden, India played 3 spinners and only 2 seamers. So a little bit muddled thinking, and something they might want to look at as the series goes on.
Well, there weren't too many laughs for India today, but that's not to say that there weren't some humorous moments as talkSPORT 2 came back with the cricket coverage to take to the airwaves.
(1:45 a.m) Look at the state of me. Getting up for cricket. Every ball live on talkSPORT 2. Dear me, better get a shower here. Don't know what day it is.
It was ridiculous. So I get a phone call at 2 a.m. We begin broadcasting at 4 a.m. or 4:45, and my alarm goes at 2 a.m. and at 2:05 I get Goffey going, "You never guess what happened. Well, that's a great start to the day." And he went off at one, and I couldn't help but laugh. And he said, "It's not funny." But I've got to admit something. Goffey, that was my fault. I put Macca's address on the sheet, and I haven't been able to tell you all day. And I certainly wasn't going to tell you for the first couple of hours.
The funny thing for me is, Goffey's remit in life is cash is king. Everything's about cash for Goffey. In the the thing he came in, he was like, I don't live in Ascot. Ascot this and Ascot that and Ascot that. The thing is, Darren, no matter how much talkSPORT pay you, you'll never have enough money to live in Ascot, mate. Never have enough money to live in Ascot.
No, the cab didn't turn up in Ascot either. They turned up in Ashford, which is where Andrew McKenna lived. I just hope they didn't wake up Andrew McKenna's wife. Anyway, look, hopefully the cabs will arrive at Darren Goff's house on time ahead of day 2's coverage. Hopefully they arrive at everybody's houses on time. We'll be back 3:45 on talkSPORT 2, live and exclusive coverage. But we'll also be back on Outside Edge. Get your questions into Harmy, #AskHarmy, and we'll do our best to answer the very best of them. But thanks for joining us.